Started again. Okay, next on the agenda, we're going to be talking about TDOs and ECO issues. And I'm going to be introducing Mr. Nelson Smith, Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services. Nelson comes to the Youngkin administration with a variety of experience. He will bring his new role leadership as CEO of several hospitals, as a U.S. Army Special Forces Combat Dive Team leader, and most recently his experience overseeing Tucker Pavilion at Chippenham Hospital. His responsibilities include coordinating and implementing the initiatives that improve access, quality, and efficiency in both the inpatient and outpatient settings. Nelson is a highly trained and skilled servant, team builder, and leader that is grounded by his faith, family, and love of country. Before working in the private sector, Nelson was a part of the U.S. Army's 5th Special Forces Group, where he received numerous awards and accolades for his outstanding leadership and courage. His awards include the Purple Heart, 4 Bronze Star Medals, and including the V device for Valor and the Green Beret. Following his retirement as a Special Forces soldier, he received an MBA from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and began a second career in behavioral health care administration. He is committed to ensuring the most vulnerable and overlooked population in our society and receive the highest quality of care. Mr. Nelson Smith.
How are you doing? Good morning. How's everyone doing? Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It is truly an honor to or actually stand in front of such an amazing group of individuals. Thank you for everything that you do to serve our community and our citizens. I do not take it for granted for 1 second on what service means. And as the introduction, I've got my fair share of service. But my hat's off to you that you're out there in the fight every single day. The thousands and thousands of interactions that you have, I would like to highlight those that are positive, that change people's lives. I know that you're all therapists, counselors, financial advisors, and everything in between. So I just wanted to say my hat's off to you for that. So thank you. And as it was pointed out, I did spend 20 years in the military, and the reason why I like to highlight that to this group is to understand that, yes, I dress this way. I do wear a suit, but I did wear a different business suit for 20 years. And I know what it means to serve with people for something that's bigger than yourself. And that's what all of you do. Sacrifice means a lot to me. I have over 7 combat deployments and, shed a lot of blood, sweat, and tears with my brothers. And I know that's what you're doing too. I'm from southwestern Virginia, a small little town called Gate City. My papa was a farmer, and I grew up helping him pick tobacco, or backer. And then I joined the Army at a young age, and haven't looked back. I was just there just the other day. So we're here to talk about our behavioral health care system, and as you know, it's under a considerable strain, and it has been for many, many years. The troubles and the things that you've been dealing with, they're not new. I know that there's a lot of attention on it now, and that's a good thing. Some of it may not feel so good right now, but it's a good thing. And it's our goal, or my goal, to limit those challenges that you experience to the fullest extent possible where our systems intersect. We want you to be back in your communities doing what you're supposed to be doing instead of sitting in hospitals on days on end. All right. Do we have the slides?
Clicker right there.
Oh, I got the clicker. I'm sorry? Oh, they should have received some slides. Well, that's not good because I have a lot of data to show you. Well, that's interesting. They should have sent ahead. All right, well, I'll just talk through the slide then. How about that? All right, there's a map of Virginia up here. It's divided into regions, and it shows you the bed counts, private and state beds. The intersection that you and I are most concerned about are the TDO admissions. Our hospital census has been going up at an alarming rate ever since 2014, the bed of last resort legislation. And then with the pandemic, staff chose to leave for better paying and less risky jobs. As you can imagine, the state facilities take the toughest of the toughest patients. They've been denied all over, and we can't say no. And then you have these nurses and these techs now that rates are going through the roof. You can work at Wawa for $18 an hour and hand out hot dogs instead of getting yelled at or punched, right? So there's been a lot of things bearing down on our systems, and it's causing a lot of pressures throughout all of our agencies here. The private psych hospitals, at those hospitals, the normal patient staff ratios, and I know this because I came from there, in the medical surgical side, is about 1 nurse for 6 patients, 6 to 8 sometimes. In the state hospitals, they average about 1 to 12 to 1 to 15, depending on some of those. So you imagine these young nurses sitting with 12 or 15 of the patients that are being transported. So it makes for a very, very dangerous situation, and I know you all understand that because your situation is probably no better. You say you can see how many state private beds we have. But we are still recovering from closing those hospitals. I know my predecessor made a tough call. But we have opened up over 114 beds in the past few months, and we're going to continue doing that. And hopefully we're going to get some of these pay raise adjustments passed through the General Assembly. One of the things that was shocking, too, I learned was we're paying these staff members in the 10th percentile, 10th compared to the rest of the market. We're at the 10th percentile as a state facility. So we've asked to get them paid at a rate at the 75th percentile. Well, when that was introduced, that was over a year and a half ago. So that's probably at the 50th percentile, which is what it's been dropped to. Nonetheless, we're hopeful that goes through. That'll help us recruit more people to staff all of these beds. So that will also alleviate some of these pressures. Beds are being found a little bit more quickly as COVID recedes, but the workforce challenges still continue. And we think that the delays in admissions are going to still be a pain point for us as we move forward. At least until we get some of our strategies in place, the actual quick wins and some of our long-term things that we're working on. We have a long ways to go. We do want to go back to full capacity. Obviously, this is in the interest of all of our citizens. And I can tell you, as I've been visiting all of our state hospitals, the staff are doing truly amazing things in the face of all this adversity. One of the things that I talked to the governor about was, every time I leave there, I actually call my wife, and I'm just in awe of what they're doing. Very difficult patients, very difficult population. And to wake up and work in a system where it's constantly, you hear in the news, a broken system, it's a terrible thing. But they still wake up and go to work to take care of those human beings when no one else even wants to look at them. To me, that means a lot. So part of what I want to do as well is change that narrative and talk about all the awesome things that they do, right? We want to help change that narrative. Hope is a very big thing, and I want to give them hope. I want them to know that they are changing lives. So the bed of last resort, that has really impeded us from safely managing some of these new admissions, and it put us all in a bind against one another. We're the only state that actually has this law. Oh, there it is. We got the slides. Thank you, sir. We did have them. All right, next slide. All right, here, alternative custody and transportation. That was a big effort during this last General Assembly. It's still kind of ongoing to relieve those pain points that you're feeling. It started in 2019 in southwestern Virginia and was rolled out over 2 years. And then it became statewide just over a year ago in March of 2021. And so far, the contractor has completed 4,400 safe transports, and these efforts have saved you about 9,320 hours on transport statewide. Prior to the pandemic, every single region has showed steady growth with transports. And you can see that on the slide that we reached its peak volume last year in April, and then the contractor had their staffing issues as well. We understood that their vacancy rates under their previous contract were as high as 40%. We think that they have reduced that to about 30% now, but that's under the previous volume, you see. So that'll come into play as we talk about the expansion of this program. The goal is for the alternative transportation to take at least 50% of the TDO transport statewide. Currently, it takes about 25%. So we still have and that's in Region 3. We still have a long way to go. Right now, we're waiting on the General Assembly budget to see if the pilot can be expanded to allow the alternative transportation to take discharges from state hospitals back to their community, which would also free up law enforcement resources. So as this grows, alternative transportation will be incredibly helpful to get officers back to their communities, but it cannot relieve you of the time that you'll spend sitting with the TDOs. So alternative custody and transportation, you all know, is a Band-Aid when the reality is we want to get the patient's treatment that they need. Next slide. So we worked with the Sheriff's Association and the administration during this last assembly, General Assembly, to ease this unsustainable position of law enforcement without causing additional harm to the already fragile state hospital system. This new legislation allows an alternative custody provider to relieve law enforcement and take custody of persons under a TDO. It evolved over time and at one point expanded to cover ECO periods too, but the extremely high fiscal impact of including an ECO period almost killed the bill completely. So there's been a budget clause that says alternative custody is the subject to availability of funds, which means that once funds are gone in the fiscal year, we could see long waits in the ED once again. We will know more when the Assembly finalizes its budget. But we are confident that what comes out of the 2022 session will provide you some relief, but it is not expected to be the entire solution. What we really want to do is work on reducing the major pain point of long delays waiting for beds. As another good faith effort, DBHDS just developed a new opportunity to allow off-duty officers to accept transfer of custody of patients waiting on TDO beds. This will be targeted in the southwestern Virginia, where we've had the most trouble reopening state beds. DBHDS will present memorandums of understanding for this program, and localities may prefer to use these dollars to expand their C-tax to reduce administration. I have started to visit some of the localities to discuss this program, and we will work towards continuing that here in the near future. Again, it's a Band-Aid. This program will be in place until the contracted custody program is underway, which is when the budget passes sometime in July 1st of 2022. But it could be an answer to help with some of these staffing issues of the actual transportation company itself. Next slide. So as you all know, we've actually, the conversation does not end after this General Assembly. The General Assembly is required that we and the stakeholders create a work group to make recommendations for a more impactful and longer-term solution to the custody problem. We'll take a look at a comprehensive look at our current process and what we can improve, and we'll also have some data from the two alternative custody programs on that last slide. And this is where I can tell you that Secretary Mosier and I, with the Secretary of HHR, and with the governor's office, have made a strong commitment to solving this issue. I always like to share this story. Secretary Mosher said that once this is over, we're going to get all the stakeholders in the room and we're going to lock the door. And we're not going to come out until we actually have a valid solution that helps us relieve the pressure. I told him I'd swallow the key. So we'll talk about we'll give you more updates in the coming weeks as this work group takes shape. I just want you to know that we are committed to continue this conversation and deliver a better solution, or the best solution, at least by the session of 2023. So I encourage you to work with us to identify the places of greatest pain and dramatically reduce the hours that you're spending in the EDs with these patients. Simultaneously, we'll be working on the capacity issue and the deeper challenge that Virginia faces, a much, much stronger community system. I also want to mention that anytime a patient is dropped off at a state hospital who isn't medically cleared or accepted is incredibly dangerous, and it's a high-risk liability for the state hospital, private hospital, for all of us. State hospitals are not equipped to handle serious medical problems, medically compromised patients, and they, more often than not, have to be returned to these medical facilities. It does exacerbate the situation with the crisis in the census crisis in these facilities. So I want to work with you to make this better for us, and more importantly, for the people that are in crisis with their mental health. And we are committed to working towards creating resolutions. So there's a lot more that I would like to talk about, but I don't think it's going to be, we don't have enough time to cover all of that. The agency has not had a strategic plan in some time. I've chartered the organization to come up with a strategy. I'm calling it our North Star objective. And a lot of those are building out those community services to prevent hospitalization. More often than not, and you probably know better than I, when I've been in these facilities, the most common theme that I heard was that the patients, these people, had no idea where to go. They had no idea what to do. So when you think of a crisis, you've done something, you have kids at home, something happens, what's the first place you think of? Emergency room. They land in an emergency room, and then they get TDO'd, and you end up in a state hospital. To me, that's not a really good system, especially when we're trying to encourage people to seek help. And once they do seek help, they land in a state hospital. Again, we have a lot of opportunity as a state, and we have a governor that incredibly supports the total transformation of this. He is 100% supportive of, as he calls it, swinging for the fences and he supports law enforcement through and through. And he hired me not because I was a hospital operator, but someone of action to get things done. And so I look forward to working with you, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Ladies first.
Good morning. Certainly appreciate you taking the time to come here today and speak to us. As you know, as we all know, Virginia remains at the bottom of the list when it comes to behavioral health. And it's not something that just happened overnight. This is something that continues and continues and continues. Having people come and talk to us and tell us, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Having legislators, not put forward the resources that need to be put forward puts us, again, I appreciate the folks that are at these psychiatric hospitals, a nurse for 12 or a nurse for 6. But essentially, we still are the extension of the public health system, and my deputies and my staff are at serious risk too. So I'm wondering, based on the legislation, excuse me, I'll have to look at 37.2809, facility of temporary detention. There is under the law, a requirement under no circumstances shall a state facility fail or refuse to admit an individual who meets the criteria of temporary detention pursuant to 37.2809. So I'm just wondering, and I understand this is a new administration and there is a lot of hope. When are you all going to start following the law?
That's a great question. Obviously, that's one that's on everyone's minds. And I'm very well aware of the law. That's the legislation, the bed of last resort. We've had that law in place since 2014. And I'm not shirking the law. Legally, it is within the bounds for you to transport forthwith. I don't think that's the debate. And I was talking about this earlier. At this point, we're all in a bad position. It puts us in a very, very bad position where agencies are actually against one another. And the only answer is that we're going to work to make the systems more robust. There are lots of opportunities for us to prevent these hospitalizations so people know where to go so they don't get hospitalized or burden the system because they can get treatment. At the end of the day, it's not a legal question in my mind. It's more of we're in an ethical dilemma. It really is. While I think you can do that, you can transport. It's not the right answer. So there's a lot of steps that we need to do in between. Number one, our staffing, our workforce. We need to develop our workforce to hire more nurses and techs. I have a very robust strategic plan with some quick wins and some near-term, mid-term, and long-term things that stretch out through 2025. And so I'd be happy to share those with your organization. We're going to be working, and I want you to integrate into that plan and be part of the solution. We've been dealing with this for a long time, and I don't have the magic wand right now, so I'm asking you for the grace and space for us to figure this out. There's a lot of support. As you mentioned, there's a lot of money. We have a pretty large budget. We have a lot of wherewithal right now. We have the administration with the full support of the governor to get these things done. As a matter of fact, he's challenged, I have to get these things done. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so that's the only thing I can tell you. I totally hear you on that, on the law. Doesn't answer your question, but.
It doesn't, but.
Excuse me real quick. Sure. Sir, the Lieutenant Governor is here and she's on a tight schedule. Can you take questions afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay. If we can come back to the questions, the Lieutenant Governor is here and I think she's on a tight schedule. So okay. He's going to take questions after she speaks.
Okay.
For everybody, our next speaker is our Lieutenant Governor. Sheriff Milholland wants to make sure that everybody knows that he is her sheriff, by the way. I almost said she's your sheriff, but anyway. Winsome Earl Sears is a native of Kingston, Jamaica, immigrated to the United States at the age of 6. She is proud to have served in the United States Marine Corps. In addition to her various appointments, she has served as the Vice President of the Virginia State Board of Education and as a presidential appointee to the U.S. Census Bureau, as co-chair of the African American Committee and the Advisory Committee on Women's Veterans to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Winsome was first elected in 2002 to the majority Black House of Delegates District, a first for Republicans in Virginia since 1865. She is the first female lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the first black female elected to statewide office. Thank you very much.
Oh, you don't have to do that. Thank you so very much. That was so kind of you. Good morning to you. I think it's still morning, yeah. I want to find out where everyone is from when it comes to military service. So when I call your branch of service, please rise and so we can honor you. So let's start with Army. Any Army folks in here? Woo! Look at you. Wonderful. Wonderful. How about Navy? Any Navy guys? Yes. Air Force? Any Air Force? Oh, look at that. You can tell Air Force, they put their hands in their pockets.
We also ate better than everybody else did.
He just said something, and that's they ate better than everybody else, and that's right. And one day I said to myself when I was in the Marine Corps, we do the same thing for the same money? So because whenever we deployed, we were on the Air Force bases, and they were in hotels, and we were out in the tents. So the other day when my husband, who is also a Marine, said, we ought to go camping, I looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. No. I'm tired of trying to figure out which leaf we can use. We're not doing that anymore. That was back in the old days. So, and then how about Coast Guard? Any Coast Guard? All right, there we go. And finally, the Marines. Who we got? Woo! Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so very much for staying involved. Thank you so very much. This will be at least the second time that you have held your hand up and vowed to protect and to serve. And we thank you so very much for that. And before I go any further, I want to bring you greetings from, as his official title is, His Excellency, the Governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, because we're so thankful, all of us, for what you do. I want to tell you this quick joke, because they say if you say a joke, they'll like you very much. So here we go. So it starts out like this. I was pulled over by a police officer for drinking and driving. He said, walk down the path in a straight line. 3 yards into the walk, the officer said, you're staggering. And I said to him, well, you're quite handsome yourself. We laughed. I laughed. He laughed. Well, now I need bail money. Yeah. We laugh at these things, but, you're keeping us safe. If you don't do it, who will? There is nobody else. You're keeping us safe. You get up, you come to work every day so that we can be safe. That's really the bottom line. And the kicker is, you don't even know if you're coming back alive to your families. Because that's the world we live in nowadays. And we thank you so very much for that. We don't take that for granted. Your families, I'm sure, when they hear of another officer down, another sheriff down, they'll probably say to you, why do you keep doing it? But you do it anyway. You do it because it's in you to do it. You want to serve. You want to protect. And we need you. Please don't leave, because if you do, your ranks are already thin. And they're thin because you feel as if nobody cares. We understand that. It's the reality, but it shouldn't be. And those of you who are part of our prison system, we thank you also for what you do, because you're helping to keep us safe, and we understand that without you, the prisons don't run well. So you are part and parcel of why people would even want to come to Virginia. Because who wants to live in a place where you're not safe? You work hard, you want to come home to your little castle, somebody's trying to break in. Who are you going to call? Don't say Ghostbusters. We're going to call you, because we can depend on you, because you're the ones who are there at the other end. You're the ones, unfortunately, that we take for granted. But I can tell you that your governor does not, I don't, the House Senate members, we don't, and our Attorney General, he doesn't. We want to work with you. We want to build your ranks back up. When we ran last year, we ran to ensure that we would not get rid of qualified immunity. We were never going to do that. It made no sense. It just made no sense that we would try to get rid of qualified immunity. To do what? To teach you a lesson? Really? Why would we want to do that? And then I suggested, because you've heard that I was in the House 20 years ago, I said, you know what? The senators and the delegates, they also have qualified immunity. So why don't we get rid of it for them and see how they like it, and then we'll get rid of it for you. Yeah, nobody took us up on that offer. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yes. And then this other thing that I kept hearing, we're going to defund the police. One of the dumbest things I ever heard. Really. Again. You know, my grandmother used to say, be careful that you don't cut your nose off to spite your face. Because again, who are we going to call? And yes, I understand, you know, more training is needed. I understand that. There are bad apples in every profession. Bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad teachers, bad cops. We get it. Just get rid of those. But we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. No. Dumb. In fact, we ran on not only not going to defund you, we are going to make sure you are made whole because there are monies that were promised to you that other law enforcement groups got. You were supposed to get the next year, and you didn't because COVID hit. So we put it in the budget. Yes. We put it in the budget that we were going to fully fund you. The governor made sure that that was going to happen. That's a promise that we made. Of course, now we have to get the budget through. But it's in there. And we hope it stays. We hope it stays. So the way that it will stay is that you will call your senator, your delegate, and let them know that they made that promise to you so many years ago. They did not fulfill it, and it's time for them to keep their promise and fully fund your people. That's what needs to happen. Because this is your government. It's of the people, by the people, and for the people, and you're the people. It doesn't say government of the politicians, and it doesn't say government of the elite. You are the government. And I can tell you, coming from a different country, I so appreciate that. Because I don't think there's anywhere else in any other country where I could be where I am today. My father came to America with only $1.75. $1.75 in his pocket. And he came at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, just 11 days before Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. And so I said to my father, why would you come then? I mean, you actually asked to come to America when things are bad for us? And he said, because this is where the jobs and the opportunities were. So with that $1.75, he took any job he could find and put himself through school, started his career, and now he's comfortably retired. And I tell you that because education lifted me out of poverty. He lifted my father out of poverty. And he came back to Jamaica and got me after he'd stabilized himself. So I'm not even first-generation American. I'm still the little girl who came off the Pan Am plane at JFK. And so I thank you for letting my father in so that we could make something of our lives. And that's what I hope, that when other people see me, they can understand this saying that we have in church. I may not be what I'm supposed to be, but I ain't what I used to be. And that's America. She may not be what she's supposed to be, but she ain't what she used to be. Otherwise, there is no way that a black woman, immigrant, could be second in command in the former capital of the Confederacy. This is America. So we're not going to beat her down. We're not going to trash her. We're going to build her up because we have to, because there is no other place like America. There just isn't. So in fits and starts, she's getting there. She's getting there, but we can't destroy her. We have to keep building and building and building. And the first order of business is that you have to have peace to do that. And that's where you come in. And that's why we need you. And we thank you so very much. And please stay. We love you. We want you. Please stay. We're going to build your ranks back with the benefits that are necessary, with the thank yous that you're deserving of. And come see us. Come see your Senate in action. Come see your House in action. Because we need to see your faces to be reminded that we serve you as well. And we thank you for your leadership. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, and God bless this great Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith, you're back up.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner. First,
Morning,
I want to thank you for your service to our country. Thank you so much. I am fully cognizant of the fact that Rome was not built in a day. Having lived in Italy, I've seen that myself. So I'll offer you a soft toss in between some of these hard questions. I certainly echo the comments of my colleagues from Fairfax, Norfolk, and I saw Sheriff Crawford. She must have stepped out. So certainly the last resort law is a huge hot button for sheriffs and deputies across the Commonwealth, and it's a big problem. I hear that you're working on it, and you seem to be a man of action from what you said and what I can see. And again, your service in our country echoes that. So my question is a fairly easy one. You mentioned the Band-Aid solution for Southwest Virginia. Where is that line for Southwest Virginia that you're drawing? We're in Danville, by the way.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that
We're
map
Region
on me.
3, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what the volume that we took was from the Roanoke Valley down through, to be honest, I don't recall, but that's a really good question. I'll make sure we get that information followed up to you.
Thank you. And actually, I understand you're coming to Danville Wednesday, and I'm also on our Community Services Board as a board member, so I look forward to talking to you then. Maybe we can revisit that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And I'll just bring that information then.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're really grateful because we need to talk about this subject more than what we have been. I can tell you, short drive. I'm the sheriff here for the city of Norfolk, the host city. Short drive right around the corner, Centera Norfolk General Hospital. I bet you can go over there right now and have 6 police cars lined up representing 2 police officers each, sitting and holding somebody waiting for a bed. And I was going to speak on the code that Sheriff Kincaid talked about, and I just want to touch on a little bit your response. And first of all, I know you're new, and we've heard great things about you, and I know I'm hopeful that you're going to do a great job for us to wrestle with this problem. But you talked about the ethical dilemma of. And I would encourage you to understand this message from law enforcement and our ethical dilemma and our problem. Your process right now is if there's a bed open, you can bring somebody to you, right? The code doesn't say that. The code says you're going to have to receive them. We already talked about that. And the failure to follow the law controls your problem. It controls your overcrowding. It controls your staffing problems. But it has a detrimental effect on our staffing problems, a detrimental effect on our ability to patrol our streets, has a detrimental effect on our ability to serve our communities the way our law enforcement is supposed to serve them, has a detrimental effect on officer safety. And when our officers are out there and they're the only one working the street, because sometimes that happens here in the city of Norfolk, because the others are tied up at the hospital, then that officer's safety is endangered because you guys are not doing your job. That's the bottom line. And I can say as a sheriff that runs a jail, you know, we have a capacity in our jail, a bed capacity. But when we reach that capacity, we don't close our doors. When we reach that capacity, we're not saying to you, when you bring a prisoner to our jail, I'm sorry, there's no room at the inn. We're still taking them, regardless of our staffing, and regardless of the number of beds that we have there. I guess all I'm saying to you on behalf of all the sheriffs that are facing the same problems that we are facing here locally is we're just asking you to open your doors, get overcrowded, and show that example to our legislators of that, what it causes when you get overcrowded. Because the bottom line is you're controlling it all for your agency, and you are hurting the rest of the Commonwealth. I ask you to do your job and start taking our inmates so that we can stop sitting at those hospitals and we can patrol our streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming out and talking with us. We appreciate that. I've run into the situation several times in my county. We'll take an individual to the hospital 8 o'clock that morning, and the clinician worker will come in from Access and say, well, this one will probably end up going to Petersburg or up Northern Virginia, somewhere else. And this is at 8 o'clock. Well, at 2 o'clock, they're still sitting there. Then about 3 o'clock, they'll get the paperwork ready, and they knew where the person was going to start with at 8 o'clock that morning. Why can't they just speed up the process and get it taken care of, rather than keeping a couple of deputies from having to sit in an emergency room at a hospital for 5 or 6 hours? Is there anything you can do about that? If you have a bed, send them, you know,
Right.
Because it's detrimental to us. You know, I'm a small county with a small department, and I try to run 2 to a shift. I know some people think 2 to a shift. Well, that's what we run. If on a good day, we'll have 3. But if there's anything you can do to help us out, we would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. That doesn't make sense. That's the first I heard of that, so I'll look into it.
That has happened several times. And now that I've got a face with a name, I'm going to let you know about it when it happens again, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Jacobich from Page County. Thank you for being here, sir. One of the issues that we face is with these TDOs, we're, just like everybody else, we're expending around $2,500 to $3,000 out of our budget for overtime just to sit on these ECOs. Then when we do the TDO part of it and do the transport, we may be on our way from Page County to Abington or wherever there's a bed. But halfway en route, we'll get a call redirecting us to go somewhere else to another bed. So is there any way that some of that money could be appropriated back to our agencies to assist us with the overtime that we're having to expend, because it's not a budgeted item for us?
Right. That's a good idea. We'll take a look at that. I know that that's part of how this program spawned, to essentially subsidize your localities for the overtime, but also the plan was to alleviate people sitting, to put the officers on duty back into the field. So, but that's a good idea. I'll take a look at it.
Hello, I'm Donald Smith. I'm in Augusta. I've talked to you on the phone. I appreciate you coming out and talking to us. I would caution the amount of, I don't think that, I appreciate the overtime and putting that money back into the localities, but we have been working overtime at our local hospital for probably the last 4 years, And we've depleted our resources so much that now we can't fill the overtime. And we're paying deputies right now $45 an hour with a grant to sit there, and we can't fill it because in my jurisdiction, we have Western State and the Commonwealth Center. And when they are turning these folks loose prior to, they shouldn't be turning them loose, but they are. We've had people have crisis problems in the parking lot, and instead of taking them back in the facility, we have to start the process all over again. So we're taking them back to our hospital and starting all over. And the other thing that I'd just like to say is I've sat and talked and listened. The state when I talk to the delegates and my senators about this issue, the state is looking at, let's put all this money towards transportation. When I have 15 ECOs and TDOs in my local hospital, transportation's not the issue. You are depleting our law enforcement resources at our emergency departments, and now we're going way beyond the scope of the law, the scope of the TDOs. We're going way beyond that. And what's happening is the ethical issues is, it's a twofold. We have a liability. We're holding people outside of what the paperwork is. And just like, with the TDO that I called you directly about, I literally have justices writing 7-day hold on a TDO to give you all time to decide where I've got to take them. Well, I'm not equipped to take care of these people for 7 days. So I would like to see the state address the bed space and stop talking about transportation. I can get a deputy to run them where they need to go. Stop talking about transportation and get the beds open.
Right.
So thank you.
Yep.
I'm back. I'm Blake Andis. I'm sheriff in Washington County, and appreciate you being here today. I know you realize that you inherited years and years of a mess. The damage that the former commissioner did to this system is horrific. She would shut down hospitals at a snap of a finger, and one of the other things that I see that needs to be improved on is logistics. The community service workers are still on the phone with all these hospitals trying to find beds. If they would take some kind of something from UPS or somewhere where there's a logistical system and we know exactly where a bed is open, we can go ahead and transport for that person. But like most of the elected officials in here, we appreciate your work, and you've got a long road ahead of you. 3 months, we know you're not going to get it done. We never changed our agency in 3 months, so we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. I think it would be helpful to just let you know what I'm thinking, and this isn't on my writing here, but so there are some near-term things that we're going to be working on. You're right. I did inherit a system, and this system has been the way it is for a long time. And also, I volunteered for this. Just keep that in mind. So I'm a multiple-time volunteer, raising my hand over and over. But I did it because I was led to do this. My wife and I went into this prayerfully, knowing that my leadership, that what I know that I can do, by empowering and enabling people. I've seen the worst and the best of humanity. I know what teams can do when they're empowered. And so I believe in myself. I believe that I have the right resources to do it. So keep that in mind. But when I think about these strategies that we're going to be doing, I want to fix this system for the good of the patient, the people that are in our communities, so they aren't going to these hospitals to begin with. Virginia has relied very heavily on inpatient treatment, period. And my fear is we're going to end up in another DOJ settlement once we finish with it. By the way, we'll wrap that up by 2023 for the DD side, but we may get into another one because we're relying so heavily on inpatient care because our people don't know where to go. So I'd like to invest more, private, moving more and empowering the private facility. Like CHKD is about to open 60 beds. Southwest, Ballad Health had a proposal to open up 72 beds. I love that idea. It's a one-time this is not administration. This is my own personal idea. But those are the things I'd like to do. This is the first job I've ever had where it's going to take an act of Congress, literally, or General Assembly to get something done, right? So when we talk about pay raises, like why can't I move that closer? Healthcare delivery needs to be flexible and responsive to the community. You've got this, and forgive me, the state of Northern Virginia is different than the Southwest, is different than the Central and Southern and the Tidewater. So our system doesn't represent our communities either. So there's a lot of strategies that we're going to be heading into with the full support of the governor to get this done. And so, again, it's going to take time. You're right. I can't even figure out what I'm doing with my hands most days. But we're moving as quickly as we can. And we've had to do an assessment. I'm getting out. I'm talking to people. I'm not just sitting in my office in Richmond. I want to go out to every one of your that's going to be really hard, but I'd like to meet with the people to hear what's going on. How can we fix it? I know what the big issues are. So, again, thank you for your patience. I know you've been dealing with this for years. You're absolutely right in the things that you're saying and bringing up, advocating for it. Keep advocating for it. Be loud. Be proud. And, again, just know that we're on the job. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next, we are going to recognize the recipients of the 2022 Virginia Sheriff's Institute Certification Program, which is put on by Virginia Commonwealth University. Dr. Robin. Oh, I sure did. Sorry. Come on up, Sheriff Chapman. He's actually going to be talking on Loudoun County's creation of the county police department. Sorry about that.
Hey, that's all right.
I thought we were running behind.
Or the lack of creation of a county police department. So I actually think I have some good news for sheriffs, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but really across the nation. For anybody that's familiar with Northern Virginia, you know that we have a county police department in Fairfax. We've got a county police department in Prince William. And if you go around the Beltway, you got one in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Arundel County. So it's kind of, if you're from that particular area, there's this kind of notion that you think that that's the norm. And you have to really kind of understand the differences in government to understand that it's that Loudoun County is very different because of the way it has grown and it's kept a traditional form of government. That hasn't stopped people along the way from trying to make a police department because they don't really understand that, and certainly in Fairfax and Prince William County, they got what's called strong forms of government. And strong form of government means you have the financial aspects that are separate and aside that are run by a county administrator, and in Loudoun County, the Board of Supervisors pretty much runs everything. So if you're the chair of the board, you pretty much are in charge of who gets selected for the county administrator job and for the county attorney job, and everything kind of trickles down from there. So in 2009, under the previous administration and of the previous chairman of the board, there was a time where they started not getting along, the sheriff and the board, the chairman of the board. So he decided he wanted to look into forming a police department, so that way that the board could basically have control over the sheriff and make him a police chief rather than a sheriff, or at least separate the duties where enforcement would fall under the chief, and then the courts and civil process and the jails would fall under the sheriff. He got voted down on that, but he was able to move forward for 2012 to try to get what's called a government reform commission to kind of look at it. They were not getting along, those two, and quite frankly, the process of leaving it up to the citizens actually worked. And so I got into the race and I defeated a four-term incumbent. He was a good guy, did a fair job, but I think the county was looking for something new. And I think I had the background and experience to lead in a different direction. And so things were going pretty good. So I get the 2012 I win. They do the Government Reform Commission. Reform Commission comes back and says, hey, we're not going to go that direction. To form a police department is just too costly, it's too disruptive, and it's complex. It's not necessarily going to change anything. It's not going to make your delivery of service any better. Why would you go through all this expense and all this trouble to try to make a police department when it's not necessary? So fast forward to the 2015 election, which puts us in office 2016. We have a new chair of the board. And as a courtesy, what I always do, I have a standing 8:30 command staff meeting every morning. And what I normally do is I bring whoever is the new supervisors in this particular case, the chair, and let them individually meet all of our staff and all that. And I didn't hear this comment that she made to my lieutenant colonel at the time. I'm kind of glad I didn't, but I didn't hear this comment. And she says, and you got to understand that election was very split. You had three candidates that split that election almost evenly. And the chairwoman won with about 37% of the vote. But she says to my lieutenant colonel, she says, hey, isn't this funny? And he says, what's that? He goes, that your boss now works for me. And I was like, whoa, okay, apparently she doesn't understand how this works with constitutional officers, okay? So I didn't think much of it till about 2 years later, when she then tries to move to consolidate our emergency communications center. Now, we share it with fire and rescue, and we have our employees there. They have theirs. We're already co-located. The facility had only been about 3 years old, brand new, Kevlar fortified and all that. So without any consultation with me, they decide that they want to hire a consultant and try to consolidate everything and have everything go under the county. And we handle 70% of the calls, and my problem with that is like, wait a minute, if our dispatchers and our call takers are answering to the county, but if something goes wrong, then I'm the one responsible. I don't particularly like that scenario, and it would have been nice had you asked what our thoughts were, considering that we handle 70% of the calls. So this study is done. The consultant on the study comes in and tells me, hey, forget it, this is pretty much a done deal. You're going to lose this one. I was like, oh, okay, is that right? So we go before the Board of Supervisors, and they come out with their report. The consultant comes out with her report, about 100 pages long. We come back with about a 25, 30-page rebuttal. And I can tell you, the board members, they were ticked off. They were, how dare the sheriff challenge what we put out there, and the county administrator, after all was said and done, and they start chastising me up to the county administrator, they said, well, we're going to go forward with this, and the county administrator says, hey, look, Chair, if the sheriff doesn't want it, it's not going to happen. Okay, so that was what then facilitated this move then to form a police department. And this police department was going to be formed for like all the wrong reasons. This had to do with power and control. It had nothing to do with the fact that we answer directly to the citizens. As constitutional officers, we answer directly to the people that we serve. And there are people up there that don't like that. So we go ahead and so she announces the day after she wins her re-election, and it wasn't even part of her platform, that they're going to form a county police department. So I think the first person I called here was John Jones and said, hey, man, we need to get a little research done on this. What's the historic process of this, and what do we have to do? And he explained to me the whole referendum process, and it's a very long, arduous, well, the referendum is actually pretty simple, and if you look historically, Prince William County was formed, I think back in the 60s when there was about 100,000 population, and Fairfax County formed a police department back in 1940 when there was probably 50,000 population. So the thing was that at a county that's full service, we got 430,000 folks. I've got over 800 employees. I've got about 650 sworn. To try to do something and change that for no good reason is pretty insane, quite frankly. So we're getting ready for this, and she announces it, and then it kind of dies down, and I'm thinking like, well, maybe she's not really going to go forward with this. And but in the meantime, we were getting ready, and So we did our research, and not only did I talk with John, he also got Virginia Sheriff's Institute on board, and they were going to help fund it and help do a counter study for us if we needed it. And what this gave us was an opportunity to actually do our own research. So we come up with a report that's about 90 pages long, and it was published, and it actually came out. It was a pretty good report, and very, very objective. And we went through all the costs it would take, and the duplication of efforts, and the computer systems that we have, and it gets so involved. It gets so involved. So we were ready to go with this report, and then on the very last day that the board could have set an agenda to put it on the referendum in 2020, the very last day, I get a call from a reporter. Oh, I hear this is going to go to referendum. I don't hear from the chairwoman. I don't hear from anybody on the board. I hear from a reporter. And I'm sitting there, I was talking to Sheriff Barron earlier, and I'm like, boy, what a great relationship that would be to be able to talk to your mayor, to your board, and for people to say, hey, Sheriff, you've been in law enforcement for 43 years. You're a federal agent. You're, a local cop. You're a sheriff. What are your thoughts on this? I never get that. Everything that I've had to do in there, and I'm in the minority up in Northern Virginia, has been pretty much a knockdown, drag-out fight. So we find out that they're going to put this on the agenda at the last minute, and they didn't think that we were prepared for this. They thought, we're going to catch them off guard. So we go ahead and we do a press release, and they were mad at that because we laid out our case in a press release. And then we teased it out a little bit and said, well, in a couple of days we're going to release our report. They didn't think we really had a report. So the county releases a report, and they come out, it's 2 pages, and it says basically all I got to do is change a couple uniforms and paint the cars different. And it's like, no, it's not quite that simple. So we tease this out, and we go ahead and release this report, and we do it to the citizens throughout the county. Now, we've got about 100,000 households on Nextdoor. We hit Nextdoor. We've got about, probably about 90,000 followers on Twitter. We got about 50,000 followers on or 60 on Facebook. So we hit it everything, okay? So they were fuming. So it's interesting because the board is there, and they're all lined up, and I would say that they probably got so many people that came in against it because people like their right to select our sheriffs as their law enforcement leaders. You don't need that middleman. You don't need somebody telling us as leaders what to do or having their political agenda influence us. The fact of the matter is, if we're not doing a job, we're out of a job. And it's not for anybody else to decide. It's for the people directly to decide. And that's the constitutional importance of what we do. So they realize it's not going well. In fact, we had one supervisor that says, this is the amount of complaints that we got that really want to support a police department and want to and support a follow-up study. And then he pulls out a stack like this and says, and these are the complaints, these are the emails I got that want to keep things the way they are. So we had the support. So they balked. So the board balked and decided to hold back on this. So and then what they did was then they very surreptitiously commission a study and don't announce it to the public, and ultimately the International Association of Chiefs of Police was selected to do this. I was actually part of the proposal review group, as was the chair of the board, as was an assistant administrator on the county, and it was very contentious, but we actually agreed on, based on the people that submitted to complete this, to bid for this study, that the information that they provided and the work that they had done was superior to everybody else. Even though I really did have concerns, it's the IACP, it's chiefs of police. I mean, where are they really going to come in on this? Are they going to hurt us? They're going to help us. Well, I can tell you, they did an outstanding job. We actually had, I don't know if you know, Rich Stanek, who was a former Michigan sheriff up there, Pontiac area. We've had, and we had a couple chiefs locally that were part of the study. And they did a phenomenal job, and it ended up being about 200 over 200 pages long, as you can see by all the tabs here. We went through this line by line by line. So they were hoping it would turn out different, and it didn't. They found that for the sake of time, and I know you're pressed on time here. They found basically what it would cost to convert a sheriff's office to a police department. It would take 10 years to do because you got to actually simultaneously build one and ultimately start converting the responsibilities over to the others. You got two organizations, you got to have different command staffs, all this different equipment and everything else. It would cost about they said between $213 and $308 million over a 10-year time period. And they said that, by the way, in Loudoun County, independent studies that were done by the county showed that our approval ratings in about 5 different categories by the citizens range from 87 to 97%. So we're averaging about, probably 92, 93% approval throughout the county. And internally, they did internal surveys, and they found that about 89% of our workers felt valued and felt there was no discrimination based on anything, age, race, sex, nothing. Okay, so we killed it. We killed it in every single category. So it was pretty much an eye opener for them. So what we did was we put out a press release, and of course they jumped on me on this because we also use our Loudoun Alert. Now Loudoun Alert has several different categories in it, and one of the things that we do when we do a press release is launch all of our press releases under a general category. Well, they don't like the majority of the board doesn't like us doing that because it's not what they want to read, but it's what we feel is important for the public to know. And we did it in a very objective way. In fact, we did our press release, we put it out there, and we cited the page number for every claim that we made. So it wasn't like me saying well, I think this or I think that. This is like IACP, reported that we had 89% internal approval rating, that we had 87% to 97%. So we went line by line and we put everything in there. And quite frankly, they were fuming at that, said I abuse the system, which I didn't because we do that with every press release. It's just that they think I'm abusing it when they don't like what we're putting out there, So we killed it with that, and I'll just read you a couple comments that came back, and I'll let you go because I know we're running behind here. But one of the supervisors said that when you're elected, you're all powerful, and you don't have to be transparent. There's no accountability. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm sitting here before you. You're tearing us up on this study. You make us go through 3 years of agony to justify what we do. We are constantly with the public. We've got an online reporting system. I see every complaint and every concern that comes in every single day. We assign it right away. We answer to the people that we report to. And by the way, the same people that we report to are the same people that you report to. So you're accountable to the same people I'm accountable to. So where is this nonsense about no accountability? If anybody is accountable to the people that we serve, it's us. It's the sheriffs. We are accountable, and if we're not doing a good job, we're out of a job. And so that's the way it works. I don't know, having worked in the police department and having worked in the federal government, and I see the way that if you're not doing outreach in this job, you're not community engaged, you're out of a job. This is what we do. So we had a lot of accountability, and I think that was the key here. A couple other false accusations that they made, they just didn't like it. The fact of the matter was that they ultimately had to back off. It was an article in the Washington Post that came out Monday. It just says Loudoun rejects switch to police. So I think we got this behind us. I think when we looked at all the comments that came in on the information that we released, as well as the press releases, the news articles and stuff like that, I would say that we had about a 95% approval in supporting what we did as sheriffs, with only very few people saying you need a police chief. because they need to be accountable to a board. And right now, if you look at what's going on with so many police chiefs there, they're answering to people that are elected that have no idea what public safety is, what law enforcement is. All they know is what their political agenda is, and police chiefs are answering and having to respond to political agendas. We don't. I mean, the way I look at this job is you can be a Republican, a Democrat, independent. Doesn't matter. When you're in a job, everything that you do is just straight away and fair. That's what we do. And I think we're, even though we're political in the sense that we get elected, I think we're about the least political politicians out there, if you want to call us politicians. Actually, when people call me that, I'm like, no, I'm a sheriff. Don't call me a politician. So, but anyway, so that's kind of it. I don't know where I am on time, but I think, okay, no, well, that's really kind of it in a nutshell. And you know, we didn't even have to, so we were supported by the VSI, VSA. I'm on the executive board for Major Counties Sheriffs of America, and also on the board of directors for National Sheriffs. So we had everybody lined up. And what's important about this fight is it's not just here in Virginia. Okay, you got 3,000 or so sheriff's offices throughout the country, 123 here. In 86 of the counties in Virginia, of the 95 counties, sheriffs are pretty much they run law enforcement. So we're, but I could tell you, like in Seattle, Washington, King County, Washington, the board of supervisors up there, or council, whatever you want to call it, they slid in about a year ago without anybody knowing about it, and that's what they try to do to me here, but we called them out on it, and we called them out loud and clear. But they slid in a referendum that allowed the board of supervisors to appoint a sheriff, and I thought, man, that kind of just flies in the face of, but that's an example of the different ways that they can go about this. In Salt Lake City, Utah, they wanted to do the same thing, and they realized it would be cost prohibitive. So what they did was they made a police department, and the police chief reports to the sheriff. I mean, it's crazy. But the police chief also reports to the county, but also reports to the sheriff. So it's a mess. I mean, so the system that we have, where we are directly responsive to the people that we serve, that constitutional authority, it's there for a reason. And so I think this is good news. This has been an albatross for me for the last 3 years. Unfortunately, it's consumed a lot of my staff and all the work that we've done. This study cost $500,000 that IACP did. Just collecting data for this cost, the hours that we put in, at least $150,000. So of our time and effort, just to kind of give them the information they needed. But we came out with flying colors, and nobody around has lowest crime rate, highest citizen satisfaction rating, internal ratings off the mark, off the charts rather. I mean, we're doing everything great. So I'm very proud of the men and women of my agency and the work that they've done on to make us. And the last comment I would make here is that the way you beat this, if you ever start seeing anybody trying to make a power move like this, is be very perceptive, okay, and make sure you get out in front of it. And I would say the key on this is to always communicate with the public, directly with the public, and do it a lot, and do good service. If you're doing good service and the public knows about it, you got nothing to worry about. And this was an all-on attack on us, and probably one of the worst places that you could try to do that attack is we got one of the most successful sheriff's offices, I would say, around, certainly in the country, when you're talking about major county sheriffs. So thank you for your time. I hope that helps, but I hope that helps you understand some of the things that we're going through here. But I say it's nice to get this one behind us, and so we can go back to sheriffing like we're supposed to. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay, now we'll get to the 2022 Virginia Sheriff's Institute Certification Program, which is put on by Virginia Commonwealth University. Dr. Robin McDougall will be helping present the certificates. So as your name is called out, please come forward. And after everybody is here, I think they want to take a group photo out in the lobby.
Detective Matthew Bucco, Loudoun County. Hopefully I said that right. Sheriff Stephen Creasy, Goochland County. Major Michael East, Goochland County. Major Gretchen Foster, Arlington County. I think she's maybe not here. Sheriff Scott Jenkins, Culpeper County. Lieutenant Paul LeConte, Loudoun County. Major Easton McDonald, Loudoun County. Captain Erica McKeithen, City of Hampton. Lieutenant Bianca Moore, City of Hampton. Detective Michael Safford, Loudoun County. And for recertification, Sheriff Beth Arthur from Arlington County. Detective Angela Devers, Culpeper County. Lieutenant Marilyn Durham, Powhatan County. That concludes this. For photograph. If all of the certificate participants would meet outside for a quick photo.
Actually, wait until after the membership, the 100% membership announcements. Sheriff Nunley, you're already up here. Have at it.
Thank you. They should be popping up on the screen real quick. All right, all of our 100% members, stand up for us. We'd like to recognize you real quick. Come on, don't be shy. It's going to take 2 minutes. Y'all hurry up. All right. Thank y'all. This is the only reason we have a budget is our 100% members and our offices that are constantly paying their dues and joining in with their association. So thank everybody here for that. We had another slide. There we go. I want to recognize these 3 counties that are working towards their 100%, but they made huge contributions to our association. And if the 3 sheriffs are here, if you mind standing. Let's see. There we go. They balanced their budget. They deserve a lot of recognition for helping and stepping up like they did. So thank y'all. We're going to go ahead and move on to, I believe, the...
Next is the invocation.
Yep.
Lunch.
Invocation and lunch.
Oh.
I have to do a raffle. I apologize. All right. We do. I have to do the raffle.
What if I choose myself? I know to do that before.
We'll work it out.
City of Fredericksburg.
All right. City of Fredericksburg.
It's for free conference registration for the fall.
Yes. What the raffle was for is for the free fall registration conference fees being taken care of. There we are. We'll get you. Thank you. All right. Thank y'all.
Next, Sheriff Mike Miller from Bedford County. I can't see for the lights. Over here. He'll provide the invocation before lunch, and then after he's done with that, if you all will step outside, the recipients of the certification program and have your picture taken out there.
All right. Let us pray. Dear gracious and heavenly Father, as we come to you on a day, Lord, that you have made, it's a wonderful day. Lord, we thank you for this conference and each one that is participating. Lord, we ask you to give each one of us the wisdom and the discernment to go back to each one of our communities and to be able to provide them the protection that each one needs. Lord, we thank you for your grace and your mercy, and we ask you now, Lord, to bless this food to the nourishment for our bodies and us to your service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, we need to be back in here at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry. Lunch is from 12 to 1, but we actually have a speaker at 12:30.